Hi everyone! In today's video, we're going to be starting a multi-part video series on how to manage and overcome depression. Depression is one of the most common mental health conditions, and it's the #1 source of disability worldwide. So it's a condition that affects a lot of people and causes a lot of difficulty in people's lives. So this video series is going to focus on practical and specific tools you can use to understand, begin to manage, and ultimately overcome depression. There are no quick fixes, but if you take the steps that I'm going to be talking about over these series of videos, what you're going to do is to give yourself a really good chance of improving how you feel and getting control of your depression. But before I get into that, just a couple of disclaimers to go over. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and this video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute or replacement for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. Now, with those things out of the way, let's start talking about depression. The first place we're going to start is by talking about what happens in depression and developing a better understanding of what depression is and how it works. The skills that I'm going to be talking about in this video series are based on cognitive behavioral therapy principles that have been shown to be very effective in treating depression. But before we can get into specific skills, we need to understand what we're talking about when we talk about depression. And I've done a number of videos discussing the symptoms of depression, so we're not going to get too much into the specific symptoms of depression, but what we are going to talk about is a model for understanding why depression happens. Now, you might be saying to yourself, I don't really care why depression happens, just tell me what I need to do to feel better. The problem with that is that the skills and tools we're going to be talking about for managing depression don't make sense unless you understand the model and the cognitive behavioral model of depression that we're talking about. So with that background, let's talk about what happens in depression. And you can think about human experience as consisting of 3 main components: what you do, your behavior; how you think; and how you feel, your emotions. Behaviors, thoughts, and emotions. And you can think of them as representing 3 sides of a triangle. Now, the key thing to understand is that all 3 sides of this triangle are connected with one another. If one side of the triangle changes, it's going to have an impact on the other sides of the triangle. Now, imagine one day you wake up and for whatever reason, you're feeling pretty down and blue. You're feeling pretty crummy. Maybe things aren't going well in a relationship. Maybe you're not enjoying your job. Maybe you're not happy with where you're at in your life. A lot of situational factors can impact how you feel and can contribute to a drop in mood. So, if you're feeling really crummy, you're feeling really down, what we're talking about is the emotion side of the triangle. If I wake up one morning and I'm feeling down, sad, blue, think about how that might affect my behavior. If I'm feeling down, that might affect my motivation. And so maybe I'm not feeling particularly driven to go to the gym, or to respond to that invitation to go out with friends, or to go for a walk, or to work on cleaning the basement like I'd planned to do. My low mood makes it more difficult for me to actually engage in behaviors that I may have intended to do. So I spend the day not doing a lot of the things that I had planned to do. Maybe I just end up watching too much TV, take a nap in the middle of the day, or just find myself spending the day puttering around my home. So at the end of the day, how do you think I'm going to feel about what I accomplished in the day? Well, I'd probably look at my day and say to myself things like, wow, that was a waste of a day. I was pretty lazy today. There were so many things I should have done, but I ended up doing none of them. I totally suck. A whole lot of negative thinking about what I did or didn't do in my day. So my behavior has an impact on how I think about myself and my situation. Now, to think about the impact that those negative thoughts are going to have on how I feel, on the emotion side of the triangle. If I'm telling myself I've wasted a day, I'm lazy, I totally suck, what do you think that's going to do to how I feel? Well, it's likely to make me feel worse, pretty crummy, and essentially reinforcing the negative depression feeling that I woke up with that morning. So now I feel even more down about myself. I feel even more sad. I feel even more depressed. I feel even more blue. How's that going to now affect my motivation, drive, and interest to do anything? Well, it's likely that I'm going to have less motivation and feel less interested in doing things. And so I enter this negative spiral that leads me to feeling more depressed. Now, the nasty thing about depression is that this negative spiral can also work the other way. So, for example, if I wake up feeling down, sad, or blue, that's going to have an impact on how I think about my day. I notice that I wake up feeling pretty crummy and I start to think to myself, oh no, this is going to be another one of those days. This is how I felt when I woke up yesterday, and I had such a terrible day. I'm likely to have another really terrible day. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just feel good once in a while? So my negative feeling and negative emotional state influences my thinking, and I start to think in a more negative, pessimistic way, anticipating that the day is going to be a bad one. And so if I'm thinking this way, what impact do you think that's going to have on my motivation or interest or drive to do things? If I tell myself that I suck, that I can never accomplish anything, do you think that I'm going to feel any sense of motivation or interest to wash the dishes that have piled up in the sink? If I tell myself that nothing I do is going to make me feel better, am I going to bother going to the gym and get some exercise like I had planned to do the day before? If I tell myself that my friends are getting tired of me being so gloomy and down, do you think I'm going to respond to their invitations to go out? Probably not. And so my negative thinking has a negative impact on my motivation, my drive, and my behavior. And so I end up not doing the dishes, and even more dishes pile up in the sink. I don't respond to my friend's invitation to go out. I don't end up going to the gym. So I'm not doing things that may make me feel better, and therefore I'm not getting any sense of reward or accomplishment because I'm behaviorally stagnant. So what impact do you think that's going to have on how I feel? Well, I'm probably going to feel more down and crummy because I'm not getting any rewards or sense of accomplishment in my day because I'm not doing anything. So the key take-home point of all of this is that depression isn't just a negative emotional state. Depression is much more than just feeling sad, down, or blue. Depression affects how you think about yourself, how you think about your future, how you think about other people, and the world more generally. Depression affects what you do, your behaviors, your engagement in activities on a day-to-day basis. Now, sometimes when I explain this to clients, it can actually lead to them feeling even more discouraged and down, at least initially. People sometimes hold the view that depression is just about a negative mood state, but when I explain this triangle, they recognize that it affects so many more areas of their life than just how they feel. And this can make it seem even more overwhelming or more daunting a task to overcome. But the thing is, the fact that behaviors, thoughts, and emotions are all interconnected is actually a good thing, because this serves as the roadmap for getting out of depression. If depression was just about your emotions, what would you be able to do about that? Can you directly change how you feel? Think about it. If you could change how you feel, kind of like just pressing emotion buttons on your arm, you probably would already do that. If you could just choose to feel happy, you'd probably choose to feel happy instead of feeling depressed. If you could do that, you would. Anybody would. The problem is there's no direct way of changing our emotions. So what about the other sides of the triangle? Do you have any control over your behaviors? Do you have any control over your thoughts? Well, let's start with behavior. Imagine I asked you to stand up, walk around the room that you're in for 5 minutes and sit back down. Would you be able to do that? Well, you probably would be able to do that, although you might question why I'm asking you to do that. But the point is, you do have some control over your behavior. You have some control over what you do. Now, suppose I asked you to try and think about a situation differently for 5 minutes. You might find that it's a little bit more challenging than mindlessly walking around the room for 5 minutes, but if you really try, you probably find that you can think about a situation from a bit of a different perspective. For example, try and think about the last vacation you took for 5 minutes. If you can think about the vacation and think about what happened, congratulations, you just changed your thoughts because you weren't thinking about the vacation until you made a decision to put some effort into starting to think about the vacation. So you do have some control over how you think, just like you have some control over what you do. Now suppose I asked you to feel really happy for 5 minutes. Can you do that? Well, when I pose that question to my clients, they'll often say, yeah, I can do that. And when I ask them, well, how? They usually give me examples like, well, I'd think about a time in my life that I was really happy, or I'd watch some comedy videos on YouTube, or I'd go for a walk in the forest. Now notice, that might make the person happy, but none of those are directly targeting the emotion. Those are changing thoughts and changing behaviors, not directly changing emotions. So as we start our journey to overcoming depression, this model of understanding depression is going to be the foundation of everything that we do. We're going to be focusing on changing behavior patterns and changing thought patterns to indirectly get at improving how you feel. And the place we're going to start is with behavior, because of the 3 sides of the triangle, behavior tends to be the one that's easier to change. Now, that's not to say it's easy or that it takes no effort to change behavior, but it tends to be easier to change than what we're thinking or certainly how we're feeling. So to start this process, what I'd encourage you to do is to think about things that you used to like or enjoy doing. You may want to take some time to think about it, especially if you've been feeling depressed for a while. It may feel like you've never enjoyed anything. But try to think about what are some of the activities that you've enjoyed before? What are some of the things that you used to enjoy doing? And write these things down, because writing them down helps get the thoughts out of your head and onto paper. Write down anything that's had a positive effect on how you felt, even though you're not sure or don't think it would help you feel better right now. This can be anything. Reading a book, watching a comedy, going for a bike ride, spending time with friends, cleaning the kitchen, anything that's ever given you a sense of enjoyment, reward, or satisfaction. And once you've written down some of these things, I'd encourage you to ask yourself a few questions like, how many of these things have you done recently? Are there any of these items that you could do more often? I talked about earlier, mood difficulties can be caused in part by lacking enjoyable or rewarding activities in a person's life. Is this true of you? By doing this little exercise, what it can do is to start priming yourself to think about behavioral changes that you can make that might improve your mood. And in the next video in this series, we're going to be talking about really practical ways in which you can get yourself to start doing some of these activities that can begin to start reversing the negative spiral in depression. And if you're interested in learning more about that, I'd encourage you to check out this video. So that's all for today's video on the foundational model underlying depression. As always, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.